your parents say to you as a kid that still affects you today? My dad raised me alone after my mom died during childbirth. Everyone praised him, calling him brave, strong, a hero. But at home, he rarely spoke. I still remember clearly the evening I broke his favorite baseball trophy by accident. He stared at the shattered pieces scattered on the floor, his eyes filling with something dark and distant. "You're just like your mother," he whispered, his voice raw. I didn't know then if it was an insult or praise, but it haunted me. By high school, I worked relentlessly for his approval. Straight A's, student council president, captain of the soccer team. Every trophy, every medal was an attempt to erase the words he'd said. Dad attended every ceremony but never smiled. Instead, he'd quietly nod, polite and distant like he was watching someone else's child. Then senior year happened, and with it, Jake Riley, star quarterback, rich and effortlessly cruel. After I beat him for valedictorian, Jake cornered me in the parking lot. "Must suck," he sneered, leaning against his gleaming red convertible, "to know your dad secretly hates you for killing your mom." His friends laughed, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Rumors spread quickly, each one more twisted, each whisper louder. "You know her dad never forgave her. No wonder she's always trying so hard." I broke down, grades slipped, trophies disappeared, and silence filled our house again. Eventually, the principal called Dad into the office. I expected rage or worse, his cold disappointment. Instead, he came home quietly, sat next to me at the kitchen table, and spoke softly. "Tell me what's wrong," he said gently, his voice shaking slightly. I could barely speak through the tears. "Jake said, you hate me because Mom died, that I ruined your life." Dad didn't speak for a long moment, his eyes filling with unshed tears. Then he stood abruptly and disappeared into his bedroom. When he returned, he was holding an old photograph. Him, young and smiling, with my mom pregnant and radiant. He handed it to me, his fingers trembling. "You were never my tragedy," he whispered fiercely. "You're the only reason I survived losing her." The next morning, Dad dressed sharply in his military uniform, medals shining, shoes polished meticulously. "Come with me," he said firmly. We walked straight into Principal Adams' office without knocking. Jake and his parents, powerful and intimidating, were already seated, smugly confident. "Mr. Miller," Principal Adams began, startled. "Enough." Dad cut him off sharply. He turned directly to Jake's father, a prominent lawyer, and placed the photo firmly on the table. "This is my wife, Emily. She died giving birth to our daughter. I've carried pain but never hatred. If your son ever speaks to mine again, I'll make sure the only reputation ruined is yours." Jake's father paled instantly, his arrogance deflating. Jake stammered a forced apology, eyes fixed on the floor, but it was Dad's face I remember most, calm, proud, strong. As we left, he placed a steady hand on my shoulder, leaning close to whisper, "Never let anyone else tell your story." That moment changed everything between us, but it also opened wounds I didn't know existed. For the first time in my 17 years, I saw my father not as the stoic hero everyone believed him to be, but as a man who had been drowning in grief for nearly 2 decades. Walking home from school that afternoon, I couldn't stop thinking about the photograph. The way Mom looked so happy, so alive. The way Dad's smile reached his eyes in a way I'd never seen in person. I realized I'd spent my entire life trying to prove I was worth the sacrifice she'd made, when maybe the real tragedy was that Dad had been trying to prove the same thing to himself. When I got home, Dad was sitting at the kitchen table with a cardboard box I'd never seen before. His hands were shaking slightly as he pulled out item after item: hospital bracelets, ultrasound photos, a baby blanket with tiny elephants on it. "I should have shown you these years ago," he said without looking up. I couldn't bear to look at them myself. I sat down across from him, my heart hammering. There were letters in Mom's handwriting, addressed to our baby girl. There were photos of the nursery they'd painted together, soft yellow walls with white trim, a mobile of dancing stars hanging over an empty crib. "Your mother wanted to name you Stella," Dad said, his voice barely above a whisper, "after the stars. She said you were going to shine brighter than all of them combined. But you named me Sarah," I said, confused. He finally looked at me, and I saw tears streaming down his face. Sarah was my mother's name. I thought it would honor her memory, but every time I said your name, I was reminded of loss instead of hope. I robbed you of the name she chose for you, the name that represented her dreams for your future. The weight of that revelation hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just carrying the burden of Mom's death. I was carrying Dad's guilt, his grief, his inability to see me as anything other than a living reminder of what he'd lost. "Why didn't you ever tell me about her?" I asked. "Really tell me." Dad wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Because talking about her made it real, made it hurt. And I was afraid that if I let myself feel that pain, I'd break completely. I had to be strong for you. But you weren't strong for me, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. You were strong despite me. There's a difference. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Sarah, I know. Let me finish. I stood up, pacing to the window. Do you know what it's like to spend your whole life feeling like you owe someone for existing? To win every award, achieve every goal, and still feel like you're not enough, like you're just a constant reminder of the worst day of someone's life. Dad was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. The worst day of my life wasn't when your mother died. It was every day I made you feel like you weren't wanted. I turned to face him, seeing my father clearly for maybe the first time. Not the hero everyone else saw, not the distant figure who'd raised me with quiet efficiency, but a broken man who'd been trying to hold himself together with silence and space. She wrote you letters, he said suddenly, reaching for a small stack of envelopes tied with a pink ribbon, one for every birthday until you turned 18. I was supposed to give them to you, but I kept them. I was selfish. I wanted to keep her words to myself. My hands trembled as I took the letters. The first one was addressed to my sweet Stella on her first birthday. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, full of love. Can I read them? I asked. Dad nodded. They're yours. They always were. I sat back down and carefully opened the first letter. Mom's voice came through immediately, warm and full of hope. Asterisk. My darling daughter. Asterisk. Today you turn 1, and I can only imagine how beautiful you must be. Are you walking yet? Do you have my stubborn streak or your father's patient nature? I hope it's a little of both. I want you to know that even though I can't be there to celebrate with you, I am so proud of the little person you're becoming. Your father will take good care of you. He's the strongest, kindest man I know. But remember, sweetheart, you are not responsible for his happiness. You are not responsible for healing his heart. You are only responsible for living your own beautiful life. Asterisk. All my love. Asterisk. Mommy. Asterisk. I looked up at Dad through blurry eyes. She knew you'd blame yourself. He reached across the table and took my hand. She knew me better than I knew myself. Over the next hour, we read through several more letters together. Each one revealed more about the woman I'd never known but who had shaped every day of my life through her absence. She was funny, writing about imaginary tea parties and scraped knees. She was wise, offering advice about friendship and self-worth. She was fierce, promising to haunt anyone who ever hurt me. But it was the letter for my 16th birthday that broke both of us. Asterisk. My beautiful Stella. Asterisk. If you're reading this, you're probably going through some typical teenage drama. Maybe you're fighting with your dad, or maybe some boy broke your heart, or maybe you're just feeling like the world doesn't understand you. I want you to know something important. You are not an accident. You are not a tragedy. You are not responsible for my death or your father's grief. Asterisk. Asterisk. I chose to have you knowing the risks. The doctors told us there were complications, but I couldn't imagine a world without you in it. If something happens to me, I need you to know that bringing you into this world was the greatest joy of my life. You were worth every risk, every fear, every moment of uncertainty. Asterisk. And your father, oh sweetheart, he loves you more than life itself. If he seems distant or sad, it's not because of you. It's because he misses me, and sometimes people don't know how to hold both love and grief at the same time. Be patient with him. Help him remember how to smile. You have my laugh. Use it liberally. Asterisk. You are going to do amazing things, my star. Shine bright. Asterisk. Asterisk. Forever your mother. Asterisk. Emily. Asterisk. By the time we finished reading, both Dad and I were sobbing. 18 years of misunderstanding, of carefully constructed walls, of love expressed through distance, all of it crumbling in the space of an afternoon. I'm so sorry, Dad whispered over and over. I'm so sorry, Stella. Hearing him use the name Mom had chosen for me was like hearing a song I'd been humming my whole life finally played by a full orchestra. It completed something inside me I didn't even know was broken. I'm sorry too, I said, for thinking you didn't want me, for trying so hard to be perfect instead of just being myself. Dad pulled me into a hug then, the first real embrace I could remember receiving from him. He smelled like aftershave and grief, and something else, something that might have been hope. I want to tell you about her, he said into my hair. Everything. Her terrible singing voice and how she insisted on cooking even though she could barely boil water. How she laughed at her own jokes before she even told them. How she painted your nursery 3 different times because she couldn't decide between yellow and green. We stayed up until nearly 3 in the morning, Dad sharing stories I'd never heard. He told me about their first date, how Mom showed up an hour late because she'd gotten lost trying to find the restaurant. He told me about their wedding, small and simple in his parents' backyard. He told me about the day they found out they were pregnant. How Mom cried happy tears for 20 minutes straight, But he also told me about the fear, how the doctors warned them early on that the pregnancy was high risk, how they discussed names and nursery colors, and college funds, while also meeting with specialists and preparing for the worst. She made me promise her something, Dad said as we were finally heading to bed. If anything happened to her, I was supposed to tell you every day how much she loved you. I was supposed to make sure you knew you were wanted. You never told me, I said softly. His shoulders sagged. I couldn't. Every time I tried to say the words, I'd hear her voice instead of mine. It hurt too much. It hurt me too, I admitted. Just in a different way. The next few weeks were strange and wonderful and complicated. Dad and I were learning how to be father and daughter instead of two people sharing space and a last name. He started calling me Stella, and each time felt like reclaiming part of myself I'd lost. But the biggest change came when Dad decided to take time off work to drive me to all the colleges I'd been accepted to. It was late April, decision deadline approaching fast, and I still hadn't chosen where to go. Part of me wondered if I'd been waiting for this, for Dad to care enough to be involved in my future. Our first stop was Northwestern, about 4 hours away. As we drove, Dad told me more about Mom, how she'd dreamed of being a teacher, how she'd volunteered at the local elementary school, how she'd wanted to make learning fun for kids who struggled. She would have loved to see you considering education, he said as we toured the campus. She always said the world needed more teachers who actually cared about their students. Is that what you think I should study? I asked. He was quiet for a moment. I think you should study whatever makes you feel alive. Your mother didn't get the chance to pursue all her dreams, but that doesn't mean you have to carry them for her. At Northwestern I met with the admissions counselor, Dr. Patricia Williams. She was exactly the kind of professor I'd imagined, warm, engaging, passionate about her subject. But when she asked about my family background, I found myself stumbling. My mom died when I was born, I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth, and my dad were just figuring out how to talk to each other. Dr. Williams smiled gently. Family is complicated, but it sounds like you're both willing to do the work. That's what matters. After the meeting, Dad and I walked around the campus quad. Students were throwing frisbees, studying under trees, laughing with friends. It looked like the college experience I'd always imagined but never quite believed I deserved. What do you think? Dad asked. I think it's perfect, I said, but I think I'm scared. Of what? I considered lying, giving him an easy answer about being away from home or academic pressure. Instead, I decided to be honest. Of being happy, of having something good and not ruining it. Dad stopped walking and turned to face me. Stella, look at me. You didn't ruin anything. You saved everything. If you hadn't been born, I would have had nothing left of your mother. Nothing left of hope. You think you've been trying to earn my love, but the truth is you've had it from the moment I first held you. Then why did it always feel like you were somewhere else? I asked. He sighed deeply. Because I was stuck in that hospital room, in those last moments with your mother. I was 17 years behind, trying to figure out how to love you both, her memory and your future, without feeling like I was betraying one for the other. Our next stop was the University of Chicago, where I'd been accepted into their prestigious English literature program. The campus was beautiful, Gothic and imposing, full of serious students carrying heavy backpacks and wearing intellectual expressions. But something felt off. During the information session, I found myself thinking about Mom's letters, about her warm, accessible writing style. This place felt cold, intimidating, like it would turn me into someone who used big words to avoid saying what they really meant. You look uncomfortable, Dad observed as we walked past the library. I feel like I'm supposed to want this, I said, like this is the kind of place impressive people go. Are you trying to be impressive, or are you trying to be yourself? It was a good question, one I'd never really considered before. Our final stop was a small liberal arts college, about 2 hours from home. Cedar Falls College wasn't prestigious or well-known. It didn't have Northwestern's resources, or University of Chicago's reputation. But when we walked onto campus, something clicked. The buildings were brick and ivy covered, human-sized rather than intimidating. Students were sitting in circles on the grass, having animated discussions. A professor was playing guitar under a tree, while a small group of students listened. This feels different, I said to Dad. Different how? Like home, maybe. Like somewhere I could actually be myself, instead of trying to be who I think I should be. We met with Professor Rebecca Martinez, who would be my advisor if I chose their English program. She was young, maybe early 30s, with ink-stained fingers, and a laugh that made me feel instantly comfortable. Tell me why you love to write, she said, instead of asking about my grades or test scores. I love the way words can make people feel less alone, I said without thinking. I love that you can tell a story that helps someone understand something about themselves they didn't know before. Professor Martinez smiled. That's exactly why I teach. What kinds of stories do you want to tell? For the first time, I found myself talking about Mom's letters, about the years of silence between Dad and me, about the way secrets can eat away at families from the inside. I think I want to write about the spaces between people, I said, about the things we don't say, and why we don't say them. That sounds like important work, she said. The world needs stories about healing, about forgiveness, about finding each other again. That night, Dad and I stayed in a small bed and breakfast near the college. Over dinner at a local diner, he asked me what I was thinking. I think I want to go to Cedar Falls, I said. It's not the most impressive choice, but it feels right. Dad smiled, and for the first time since I'd known him, it reached his eyes completely. Your mother would have loved that place. She always said the best learning happens when you feel safe enough to be vulnerable. You really think she would have approved? I think she would have been proud of you for choosing what felt authentic instead of what looked good on paper. We drove home the next day in comfortable conversation, something that would have been impossible just a month earlier. Dad told me more stories about Mom, but they were lighter now, funny anecdotes instead of painful memories. He told me about the time she tried to surprise him with homemade bread and nearly burned down their apartment. About how she insisted on adopting every stray cat in the neighborhood, until they had 6 cats and a dog in their tiny one-bedroom place. About how she sang in the shower so loudly that neighbors complained, but she didn't care because she said happiness should be loud. She sounds like she was a lot of fun, I said. She was chaos, Dad said, but he was smiling. Beautiful, wonderful chaos. The kind of person who made everyone around her feel more alive. Is that why you've been so quiet all these years? Because without her you forgot how to feel alive? Dad considered this, maybe. Or maybe I was afraid that if I let myself feel too much joy, I'd be dishonoring her memory. Like I didn't deserve to be happy when she couldn't be. That's pretty stupid, I said gently. He laughed, actually laughed. Yeah, it really is. When we got home, Dad helped me write my acceptance letter to Cedar Falls College. As I sealed the envelope, he handed me something, a small jewelry box I'd never seen before. This was your mother's, he said. She wanted you to have it for graduation. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a star-shaped pendant. It was simple but beautiful, the kind of jewelry that would go with everything and never go out of style. She wore it every day, Dad said as he helped me put it on. She said it reminded her to reach for her dreams, even when they seemed impossible. I touched the pendant, imagining Mom wearing it, imagining her choosing it specifically for me. It's perfect. There's something engraved on the back, Dad said. I flipped the pendant over and read the tiny script. Shine bright, my star. Love, Mom. I started crying again, but this time they were different tears. Not tears of loss or regret, but tears of connection, of finally understanding that I had been loved, completely and unconditionally, from the very beginning. Graduation came and went in a blur of ceremonies and parties. Dad was there for all of it, taking pictures, introducing himself to my friends' parents, beaming with pride in a way I'd never seen before. Jake Riley gave the graduation speech, talking about legacy and making your mark on the world. But all I could think about was Mom's letters, her simple wisdom about living authentically and loving generously. After the ceremony, Dad and I went home and sat on the front porch with glasses of lemonade. The evening was warm, full of the promise of summer. I have something to ask you, Dad said suddenly. I've been thinking about maybe going to counseling, to deal with everything, the grief, the guilt, the lost years. I was wondering if you'd consider coming with me sometimes. Family sessions. I looked at him, this man who had seemed so strong and untouchable for so many years, admitting he needed help. I'd like that, I said. And I was thinking, he continued, maybe we could start some new traditions. Things that are just ours, not connected to grief or memory. Like maybe we could learn to cook together, since neither of us inherited your mother's domestic skills. I laughed. That sounds dangerous but fun. Or we could take a trip somewhere your mother never went, somewhere we can make new memories, without feeling like we're intruding on old ones. Where would we go? Dad smiled. Your mother always wanted to see the northern lights. She had this idea that we'd take you to Alaska when you turned 18, but we never got the chance. Maybe we could go together, the two of us, see them for her, but also for us. The idea of traveling with Dad, of having adventures together, felt both foreign and wonderful. I'd love that. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Dad reached over and squeezed my hand. I want you to know something, Stella. These past few weeks, getting to know you, really know you, has been the greatest gift of my life. You're everything your mother hoped you'd be, and more. Even though I'm not perfect, even though I don't have straight A's anymore and I chose a small college over an impressive one, especially because of those things, Dad said. Perfect people are boring. Your mother wasn't perfect, and that's what made her extraordinary. You don't have to be perfect either. You just have to be you. As I got ready for bed that night, I looked at myself in the mirror and tried to see what Mom might have seen. Not a mistake or a tragedy, but a possibility. A chance for joy and love and all the beautiful messiness of being human. I thought about the long journey ahead, college, new friends, maybe even love someday. But for the first time, I wasn't approaching the future as penance for the past. I was approaching it as a gift, one that Mom had given me by choosing to bring me into the world despite the risks. 3 months later, as Dad helped me move into my dorm room at Cedar Falls, I found myself thinking about that broken trophy from so many years ago. How Dad's words, "You're just like your mother," had haunted me for so long. Now I understood what he'd meant. Not that I was responsible for destruction, but that I carried Mom's spirit with me. Her curiosity, her warmth, her ability to find hope in difficult circumstances, her willingness to take risks for love. "You know," I said to Dad as we finished unpacking, "I think I finally understand what you meant that night with the trophy." He looked puzzled for a moment, then understanding dawned. "Oh Stella, I didn't mean, I know what you meant now," I interrupted, "and I'm proud to be like her." Dad hugged me tight, and I could feel 18 years of misunderstanding finally dissolving between us. "Call me every week," he said, "and not because you have to, but because you want to." "I will," I promised. "And Dad, thank you for finally letting me know her, and for letting me know you." As he drove away, I stood in front of my new dorm, touching Mom's star pendant, and feeling the weight of possibility ahead of me. I was no longer Sarah, the girl trying to earn love through perfection. I was Stella, named for the stars, ready to shine in my own way. That night, I wrote my first letter to Mom, not the perfect formal letter I might have written before, but a real one, full of hope and plans and gratitude. Asterisk. Dear Mom, asterisk Dad and I finally found each other. It took 18 years, but we got there. I think you'd be proud of us both. I'm starting college tomorrow, and I'm scared and excited and ready to write stories that matter. I'm ready to live the life you dreamed for me. Asterisk. Thank you for choosing me even when it was hard. Thank you for the letters, and the name and Dad's smile, which finally looks like the one in that photograph. I'm going to shine bright, just like you asked. Asterisk. Love always. Asterisk. Your Stella. Asterisk. I folded the letter and put it in my jewelry box next to the photo of Mom and Dad. Some conversations transcend death, I realized. Some love is stronger than loss, and sometimes, the words that haunt us as children become the words that set us free as adults. Dad was right. I am just like my mother, and that's exactly who I was meant to be.